Thank you for being here. I am Mary Bauer, and I won't give any of my background. I'm just here kind of incognito today because I really care about caregiving issues and what's going on in our community. I'm so glad that you're here to learn about it. About 20 years ago, I was immersed in the field of Alzheimer's and dementia with my job and as a caregiver for my mom and my mother-in-law, along with my husband. And as well, two daughters, younger daughters, that were going through health issues, so we were caregivers for our two adult children as well, and new grandbabies arriving each year. And so I've been there, not at the same level that some other caregivers I've met since, but years ago our message was help and hope. And I'm telling you that 20 years ago there was very little of either. Particularly in rural Minnesota, people were trying to deal with it as best they could, one day at a time. And I could not offer them much as a professional in the field. And so to be here today and to see what's happening in this community so that people can get help and be given hope is incredible to me. And I think it's only going to get better. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're all in this together. And the Dementia Community Action Network, or DCAN as we fondly refer to it, has led the way in this community and surrounding area. And I am so glad to know these people sitting here and proud to be a part of this journey with them. So we'll get moving right away. This is going to be, we only have 30 minutes. I'll try and keep it at that. I'm not very good at being a sergeant of arms, but I'll do my best. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Dr. Zook, who is the president and founder of DCAN. I remember having conversations with Pat years ago about this concept and how important it was. And here we are today. So Pat, you're going to give us an overview of your services and the process for medical evaluation and dementia care through DCAN. Have I got that right? Take it away, Pat.
Before I get going, I'd like to introduce Katrina Sands. She's a new person who will be working as an occupational therapist on Wednesdays, seeing people for what's called CPT, cognitive performance tests, and hopefully other things as we continue to expand our services that we offer. So what we do at the Dementia Resource Center, which is where we work, and is right near Apollo High School in the Center Care Minnesota building. And what we do there is we see people with dementia. We do dementia evaluations. We also see people who want to prevent dementia, and we haven't figured out a way to get insurance to pay for that, but we do evaluate people in a very similar process that takes several hours who just want to plan for how they can prevent dementia without having any symptoms. Maybe their parents had dementia, maybe they have known risk factors that we're now starting to talk more about. But we do those things right there. But what we do is different from what standard dementia care is. Standard dementia care is mostly, let's make the right diagnosis, let's do a lot of expensive tests to prove our diagnosis, and then do you need medication or not? And then, oh, by the way, exercise and eat good. And we need much more than that. So we fill in the blanks of all the other things that we think are needed for what is now being called comprehensive dementia care, which we do. And the government now has acts in a committee in Congress to consider covering and paying for quality care for dementia, which we call comprehensive. So comprehensive means different things, but we do what other standard dementia care does. Now, standard dementia care may include a specialist called a neurologist who's very good at not only discerning dementia, but all the other things that could masquerade as dementia. We don't want to miss that. We still need neurologists to help us with that. And maybe the fancy tests, they're very expensive and with some hazards, maybe you needed to rule out those other unusual medical conditions. Things, I was a family doctor for 40 years, things that I may have never seen in 40 years. So that's why we need the evaluation by specialists to determine that. But beyond that, when someone just says, oh, by the way, eat good and exercise, that's not nearly enough. So our evaluations is probably on average about 6 hours total. One of these ladies will do an intake to make sure people are up to doing all the things we're going to ask them to do, make sure they're good candidates for our process. I will do an online medical chart review, which takes 90 to 120 minutes to do it properly, looking at everything we can look at to finally get a leg up on the dementia process. So I look at meds and medications. It turns out that, I don't know, maybe the majority of patients we see is on at least one drug chronically that has cognitive side effects. We've had people with 3 or 4 medications with known cognitive side effects that they've been on for a number of years. Well, if there's no alternative, if it's some sort of an exotic cancer drug, okay, there's no alternative, but most of them do have an alternative, which has less or no cognitive side effects. So, and when you do dementia care in 20 minutes, you can't discover things like that. It takes much more thorough analysis of your medical history and your medication history. We spend a lot of time on that. But the intake, they make a report, they send it to me. I add all what I learned from my 90 or 120 minutes of chart review, and then we schedule an intake evaluation with me and one of my colleagues here. And I listen to their input because they see a lot of things that maybe I miss. But then I write that up, and that's usually a 6 or 7 page document that is the equivalent of an individual care plan, which they can take to their clinicians. We collaborate with their clinician. We don't take over. We don't, try to take over their care. We intend to collaborate with your clinician in town. And I use the word clinician carefully because they're not always physicians. They may be a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, or now called a physician associate. And we want to collaborate with them because primary care will need to do dementia care. Primary care is not comfortable doing dementia care. There's somebody here from the Alzheimer's Association, and their studies show that primary care doctors are not comfortable. What we've learned about dementia that's new and important is mostly been discovered in the last 10 years or less. And those who graduated medical school 10 years or more ago didn't get that training. So the new stuff is a little bit avant-garde. When I was in training, you didn't use the word dementia and prevention in the same sentence because it was considered hopeless. And now we know that's not the case. We know that especially if you have mild symptoms, we can reverse some of those symptoms strictly by adjusting for your risk factors. So we do a very detailed assessment of your dementia risk factors, over 100 of them. And the ones that we can fix, like maybe you should wear your sleep apnea at night. Maybe you should quit smoking. Maybe you need to improve your sleep. And playing the TV on loud doesn't help with your sleep, and having all sorts of lights on in your room doesn't help your sleep, et cetera, et cetera. Hundreds of risk factors. And the ones that we can fix, we coach our clients on how to fix those. And then we have that report. We share it with the primary care clinician. We make suggestions. We make several diagnoses. We include all their other medical diagnoses. And we try to explain to the primary care physician how those other diagnoses, particularly things like sleep apnea and atrial fibrillation, which is very common in my age peers, very common, maybe 25% of my age peers will have that, could be profoundly, having a profound effect in terms of your dementia course. Having little strokes ongoing could really hurt your brain. So
Pat, I'm watching the time. That's the job you hired me for, right? Could you give a success story of about in a minute or so?
Mary's giving me the hook.
I am. I'm trying to be very nice about it.
Very good. So you try to ram an elevator speech that you've spent 6 years of your life.
Exactly. I know that about you.
That easy. I don't want to give away anybody's particular story because I see a lot of our clients in the room today, but we've had incredible words of encouragement, like things like, I wish we had this 5 years ago, or this is exactly what we needed. Where are the other clinics like yours? And we have to say there are none. There's a clinic in St. Paul where they charge cash for what they do, and it's very similar to what we do, but it's several $1,000s, and nobody can afford that. We don't want to just take care of rich people.
Thanks, Pat. We could do a whole day with you. So next on the, seated next to Dr. Zook's left is Tammy Kolbinger, and next to her is Christina Rodriguez. And both of them are care navigators and educators for the Dementia Community Action Network, as well as the Dementia Community Care Clinic, if I got that right. And they do yeoman's work. They are the first touch that people experience, and they stay with them on their journey, building relationships, doing the tough stuff, addressing the tough issues, and giving people hope and information so that they can be smarter about dealing with this disease process. So we'll start with Tammy, and I'm going to just have a little different strategy, Tammy, so I'm going to step away from the podium, and when I step back, that means 1 minute left.
Okay.
We'll try another strategy on this.
Either that or Christina said she'd just pinch me. Either way works.
Okay, so Tammy's going to talk about the caregiver coaching services, which are essential. And again, my heart's with caregivers, and so I just can't wait for you to hear more about this. Go ahead, Tammy.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Dr. Zook, for talking about the medical portion of our clinic, which is so important and valuable in the community. So I'm going to start with our supportive services. So caregiver coaching is what I'll be talking about today. I, like most people in the room, am a former caregiver. My father had Alzheimer's type dementia. I walked on his journey with him, and then my father-in-law had Parkinson's type dementia with Lewy body type dementia. So I have been in the same seats that most people are in our audience today. So thank you for coming here and sharing your time and your day with us. So caregiver coaching is just one of our services that we provide at one of the supportive services that we provide at the clinic. It is an individualized coaching session. And it can be individualized. It can be with a group. We have a few that they have 7 siblings, and so it is with a group. It can be one-on-one with that caregiver as well. The caregiver, it helps to equip the caregiver or the care partner. We like to say care partner, but then people are unsure of what that is. So caregivers or care partners, it equips them with knowledge, skills, tools, and the support that they need to succeed at their caregiving role. That role can be very challenging, as you know, and it helps to have all the extra support that you can get. Somebody had asked, is there such a thing as too much support? My answer to that is always going to be no. There is never too much support, wherever you get that from, whatever your village may be. During the meetings, we talk through challenges of caregiving. We set goals. Now, I say that certain meetings look like that, others do not. There is no 2 similar people, so there's no 2 similar sessions. So one might have strictly going through a form that we use, which is called an APIS form, to get information that we need and to set those goals. So talking through what that person's journey is and setting goals. Other people, it might look like kind of splitting the work. So we have 2 different type of caregivers. We have caregivers that may not be patients at our clinic, and we have caregivers that are patients. So, or their loved ones are patients. And so there might be different goals that we might set up for the caregiver as well as the person that's doing the caregiving session. The caregiving coaching is really designed to help support the caregiver and assist them in decision making and problem solving. It can be, we've heard from many of our persons that we coach, it can really be a confidence builder. I don't think any of us, when we were aging, thought that, well, I'm going to be a caregiver someday, maybe for a spouse, maybe for a parent. I certainly didn't think that at any point that I'm going to be a caregiver for not 1 but 2 parents along the journey. And someday I might be a caregiver for a spouse, or maybe that spouse is my caregiver. So it's interesting when we have to build those skills. We all have professions and careers, and we've built our skills throughout a lifetime, but caregiving can be a certain skill that we just need a little help with. And that's what our goal is during the caregiver coaching, is to build that confidence and help each caregiver with those goals, and it's individualized. For everybody's goals might be different of what they need. I want to just talk a little bit about how can you utilize this service. So you can, like I said, you can be we have patients, obviously, and so you can be a caregiver from one of the patients, and we also do a lot of outreach, which you're going to hear about in a little bit here. And so you do not have to have that connection as a patient. You can just come into our clinic and receive those services. I'd like to thank Central Minnesota Council on Aging. We are very grateful and thankful for them to receive funding to provide this particular service. You will hear more about other services that we are funded through. So we are always grateful to have that funding. We offer our caregiver services in St. Cloud, which is where our office is located. We also offer them in Brainerd and Sauk Center, and we will start with Becker in a couple of weeks. We'll be able to start doing those caregiver support services in Becker as well. The sessions are usually about an hour long. They can be an hour and a half long as well. We also offer them virtually. As we heard many speakers today talk about the region that is served. So we as well serve 14 counties. So you can imagine that's quite a large service area. I will just quickly share, I, like Dr. Zook, don't have a specific story to share. But I would like to just share that what we hear a lot from our caregivers is that it builds confidence, and it makes the day just a little bit easier talking through this with somebody, and some decisions are made a little bit easier.
Thank you, Tammy. And next in line is Christina Rodriguez, and I've met Christina also through my work in the past, and so nice to have you here. So also, Christina is also a care navigator and educator, and she's going to talk about support groups
Yes.
specifically.
Specifically support groups. Well, Mary, thank you for being here. We're very happy to see you incognito. It's good to see you out. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the support groups that we provide as part of our caregiver services at the Dementia Resource Center Clinic here in St. Cloud. And the first thing I'd like to do is just read to you this little thing that says what a caregiver is. A caregiver is a general term referring to anyone who provides care for a person who needs extra help. Oftentimes, I will work with individuals and they will say, I don't think I'm a caregiver, because they'll think of being a caregiver means that they're providing really heavy cares. They're helping somebody to the restroom. They're helping somebody get off of one chair onto another, maybe needing to do some heavy lifting. And when we talk about dementia, we often talk about maybe that individual with dementia doesn't always need those heavy cares right away, but they need that extra help. And so an individual who's a caregiver might be somebody who comes around to make sure that the stove is turned off after that person has made their lunch, right? Or maybe it's somebody who's a little bit of a companion as well, helping with their social needs. Dr. Zook mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I'm going to kind of repeat something that he said, but first I want to talk about a support group is a group of people who come together with a goal of overcoming or coping with a shared issue. Members of groups often provide each other with moral support, information, and advice on issues that they're sharing some shared experience. Members with the same issues can come together for sharing coping strategies and feel more empowered. And that is really important as a caregiver, that we feel empowered. And when individuals come to support groups, they can often share some of their stories that maybe they wouldn't share out in the public with anybody to hear, but they feel more safe, or they feel that they're in a good environment, and so they'll share some of these stories about what it's like to be a caregiver for somebody living with dementia. So I once worked with this gentleman, and he came to a support group, and he just wanted to check it out. He didn't consider himself a caregiver, he just wanted to see what it was all about. And then as we went through kind of the hour-long support group, he said, well, I kind of check in on my brother every now and then, and I think he's starting to show signs of dementia. And then he said, oh, and my sister has this issue with her knee, so I've been having to drive her from Sauk Center to St. Cloud a couple of times a week so she can get to the doctor. And then he said, oh my gosh, and then my wife just hurt her back, so now I'm doing the laundry. And I'm even cooking some meals. And I questioned him and I said, well, why don't you consider yourself a caregiver? And he said, I'm just the responsible one. Right? So then I questioned, Dr. Zook asked this earlier, how many of you in here consider yourself to be a caregiver? Right? A lot of you. How many in here consider yourself to be the responsible one? Right? Because I think people look at it that way and they think, I'm just doing the responsible thing. I'm not a caregiver. I'm just doing what's responsible to do. But really, in some way, we are all caregivers. Dr. Zook had mentioned that earlier. It could be, you're sitting with somebody next to, or at church, you're sitting with somebody who has dementia and you're just sitting there holding their hand, right? Or maybe it's where you're helping to deliver a meal or coming by to say hello. My grandmother is 87 and she's living with Alzheimer's type dementia up in Cross Lake. She's now living in a facility. I go see her as often as I can, and I still consider myself one of her caregivers. Because while I'm there with her, I'm doing whatever I can to bring comfort to her. Right? But my grandmother has 5 children. She has 13 grandchildren and about 26 great-grandchildren, and we all consider ourselves her caregivers. And I think that that's important and that we should kind of pat ourselves on the back about that as well, because it takes, years ago we would hear this, right? It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to care for somebody who's living with dementia. Right? So I encourage you all to check out some support groups that we offer or that are offered by others. Here, for us at the Dementia Resource Center Clinic, we offer a support group the first Tuesday of the month in Sauk Center. The third Tuesday of the month, we're in St. Cloud at our office. The fourth Tuesday of the month, I'm in Wadena, Long Prairie, and Staples. And the fourth Wednesday of the month, Tammy is in Becker. So we have 6 support groups that you're able to come to. We like to say that support groups are meant to come as you are and come as you're able. We don't necessarily require RSVP. We say if you're able and you can come, please come and join in the support group. And I will say quickly, Mary, I see you standing there, that one of the things that people, and she pinched me, and one of the things that people will tell me is, I feel it's nice to talk to an adult about other adult things at a support group, because sometimes if you're a caregiver, you may not feel like you always have adult conversations anymore, right? But somebody once told me, I belong to a lot of Bible studies, and I love my Bible studies, and she said, but I could never talk about my struggles with my husband with dementia at a Bible study because I'm worried I would be judged, right? But you can come to any of our support groups, and I promise we will not judge you.
Thank you, Christina. And wrapping it up for us is Christina Wojcicki. And Christina is the newest staff person at the center. And she is going to talk about her role as a community health worker and how you serve the people that come for services. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? I know I have a very soft voice. Yeah? Okay, perfect. So like she said, my name is Christina Wojcicki, and I am a community health worker at the Dementia Resource Center in Clinic. I've been there for about 6 months now, and then my main role in our office is to cover those caregiver services like the caregiver coaching that Tammy mentioned. As my position is developing in the future, I'll continue to work more with caregivers and those living with dementia throughout our clinical evaluation process. So during each evaluation, we help clients gain a better understanding of what their risks for developing a dementia are. And then at the end of our clinical evaluations, like Dr. Zook mentioned, we provide a list of recommendations. Seeing that list of recommendations can often be very overwhelming for us to see, especially when we see some of those lifestyle change recommendations like diet, physical activity, and socialization. So my goal as a community health worker is to help those caregivers and those living with dementia break down those recommendations and set realistic and manageable goals that are going to fit your needs as a caregiver or person living with dementia. So to do this, we build action plans for those goals that we set so you can better succeed. When we're building those action plans, it's important to look at those potential barriers that we may be facing and brainstorm some ideas of how we might be able to overcome them. During that process, we often identify what resources or support systems you may already have in place to kind of help you succeed in those plans. But we can also identify what resources or support systems could be beneficial to utilize moving forward in the future. Action plans could involve the education on new topics, adopting healthy behaviors, engaging in new social opportunities, and are utilizing some of the resources provided at DCAN. So we meet as needed to track the progress towards all of those goals, and we'll make adaptations as needed. So making those adaptations allows me and my team to offer the best support that we can as you all go through your journey. So some of those resources offered at the Dementia Resource Center and Clinic include the services that we mentioned, those clinical evaluations, caregiver coaching, and support groups. We also have a resource library available in our office, which includes books about caregiving and dementia, booklets and infographics from the National Institute on Aging, and we also have different flyers from local resources in our community. And then DCAN will now be offering the CPT or Cognitive Performance Test as part of our services through a partnership with our independent contractor and occupational therapist, Katrina Sand. The CPT is a functional cognitive assessment that will allow our clients, their care partners, and their medical providers to understand, with objective clinical data, the client's level of functional impairment and the specific supports he or she needs to live as safely and independently as possible. Many of today's cognitive tests only provide a number, and it can be difficult to understand how that numbered score correlates to real everyday life. So the CPT is going to fill this gap, and we are excited to be able to offer this service now. And then DCAN will also soon be beginning our dementia-informed counseling at our clinic. The dementia-informed counseling brings renewed hope, insight, and life into couples or families' previously solid relationships that could be turned upside down by dementia. This can help get relationships back on track with new understanding and just a little professional guidance. And our counselor will take a positive and constructive approach in identifying solutions to the new situation that are doable and beneficial for all.
Christina, do you want to share a success story?
Sure. So similar with them, I don't have a specific success story, but we've just had multiple clients mention that the environment at DCAN is very comforting and welcoming, and that everyone always feels very supported and listened to when they come. And that those clinical evaluations and recommendations provided can often offer a sense of hope for many individuals, and that hope for that continued quality of life as they move forward in their journey.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Excellent job. You really crunched the... My job was easy. So we're all here for the same reason, and that's to get information, figure out what the tools are that we need for the journey ahead, share with others if we've been on the journey, and bottom line, create a quality of life for everyone until the end of their life. So thanks again for being here. Enjoy your lunch.